First, I would like to thank all of those who have supported my channel and this playlist in particular. Also, I would like to thank you for watching this analysis of director Stanley Kubrick's 1999 film Eyes Wide Shut. If you like this video, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, Cinema Geeks, and this playlist. I would also appreciate it if you would click on the link in the description and leave a dollar donation to help me make more videos such as this one. To Bill Harford, life is all about knowing the boundaries. Being a doctor gives him the professional excuse to examine beautiful naked women every day. Under these circumstances, any normal man would give in to temptation, but not Bill, who is an exceptional man with the ability to suppress his emotional and sexual impulses. This is what he wants his wife to believe. And when Bill and his beautiful wife Alice attend a Christmas party, she dances with a tall, dark, and handsome Hungarian named Sandor. Later, she tells Bill that Sandor tried to seduce her into having sex. Instead of reacting with anger or jealousy, Bill reminds her that she is a very beautiful woman and almost any normal man would screw her if they had the chance. Bill also tells her in an indirect way that nature did not hardwire women to think about sex the way that men think about sex. This is his answer to Alice asking him if he thinks that his female patients get aroused by him touching their breasts. To prove to Bill that women have fantasies too, Alice tells him about her sexual fantasy with a young naval officer. This is a shock to Bill, the idea that Alice, his wife, had entertained the thought of having an affair. Her revelation plants a seed in Bill's imagination and opens his eyes to a dream world and a yellow brick road of jealousy, anger, fear, lust, and danger. He rents a mask to sneak into an exclusive orgy stocked with the most beautiful women imaginable. But Bill's paradise turns into hell after he is caught in order to take off his mask in front of everybody. Eyes Wide Shut is a 1999 erotic mystery thriller directed by Stanley Kubrick, who died of a massive heart attack just 6 days after screening the final cut of this, his final film. Kubrick co-wrote the script with Frederick Raphael, which they adapted from Arthur Schnitzler's 1926 novella Traumnovelle, or Dream Story. The film's music is by Jocelyn Pook, its cinematography is by Larry Smith, and it is edited by Nigel Galt. Amazingly, the film was completely ignored at the Oscars, but it did receive recognition from elsewhere, including the Venice Film Festival, the Chicago Film Critics Association, and the Golden Globes. In this essay, I will cover the following themes from the film. So, let's begin. Bill and Alice Harford attend a Christmas party, and there a butler summons Bill to one of the mansion's many rooms upstairs, where he finds Victor, the host of the party, with a prostitute. The naked woman is laid out and unconscious on a small couch. Victor is a married man, very wealthy, and a socialite, and Bill is a doctor. Having his name connected with a dead crackhead prostitute would ruin Victor's life, but luckily the woman turns out okay. Victor asks Bill to keep this under his hat, which goes without saying. The following night, Bill and Alice are at home relaxing and smoking weed. Out of boredom, they decide to play the truth game concerning the Christmas party they attended the night before. Alice goes first, telling Bill that the tall Hungarian she danced with last night wanted to have sex with her. This does not, however, make Bill upset at all. In fact, he even tells her that any normal man should want to have sex with a beautiful woman like her. Alice then asks him about the two beautiful models she saw him with at the Christmas party. Bill tells her that one of the models recognized him from a time when he removed something out of her eye. Alice asks Bill if he has ever fantasized having sex with any of his female patients, and he tells her no, because he is a doctor and he has the exceptional ability to detach himself from his patients. But the main reason he does not fantasize over his female patients, he tells her, is due to the fact that he loves her. Bill goes on to explain that his female patients are not aroused by him either. His confidence concerning this incites Alice into telling him about her obsession with a young naval officer at Cape Cod. The officer aroused her so intensely that if he had asked her to run away with him, she would have done so without any hesitation. Bill is stunned and hurt after she tells him this, and images of her making love to the naval officer continue to torment him throughout the film. How can you relate to someone you cannot empathize with? Bill maintains that he is emotionally and sexually detached from females other than his wife. In the context of doctor and patient, Bill is trying to form himself to the way in which he wants his wife to see him. Sociologist Irving Goffman describes this behavior as impression management, which is the altering of the presentation of the self in order to create distinctive appearances and satisfy particular audiences. Additionally, Bill plays the class card here by using his professional status as a doctor to distinguish himself from his female patients who, in regard to their status in his office, are underneath him. He also uses the word detached in relation to himself and his patients to suggest that he is master over the impulses and emotions of the flesh. This detachment on Bill's part impairs his ability to relate to Alice as a sensual being struggling with desires outside of her marriage to him. For instance, her body language in the scene with Sandor clearly shows that she is aroused by him. She flirts with him as much as he flirts with her, and even lets him drink wine out of her glass. But when all is said and done, she fights with her impulses, conquers them, and walks away on her own, leaving Sandor empty-handed. By contrast, Bill probably would have allowed the two models to take him somewhere to have sex if he didn't have to go see about the prostitute who almost died of a crack overdose. Evil is natural to us. From babies to adults, we are cultivated by our parents, the educational system, culture, religion, the legal system, and other institutions to discipline our natural tendencies towards what we consider wrong or evil. Therefore, revenge is the natural response to wrongs imposed on us by others. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is not natural. For instance, Bill could forgive Alice for her sexual fantasy affair with the naval officer, but he does not. Instead, he goes out in the middle of the night to gratify his own carnal desires. He stops by to see a woman named Marion, whose father died in his sleep. Marion tells Bill that she is engaged to be married and moving away. She then bursts into tears and begs him to make her his mistress. In the script, Bill is aroused by Marion and interested in making her his mistress until she pisses him off by reminding him of Alice's obsession with the sailor. Bill goes from being angry to feeling empathy for Marion's fiancé, whom he now sees as he sees himself. In the script, Bill leaves Marion's apartment and sees a tramp on a park bench that makes him sick to his stomach. His emotional detachment from the tramp's predicament changes when a drunk college student and 5 of his buddies shoves him trying to pick a fight. Bill's emotional state changes to fear, and his indifference towards the tramp he saw on the bench changes this fear to empathy at the thought of where he would probably end up if he took on 6 men by himself. Bill backs down from the 6 college students and avoids a beating. A prostitute named Domino steps out of the shadows and invites him into her apartment. By now, Bill is so stirred up by so many contradicting emotions that he now gives in to lust and pays $60 to have sex with a woman he does not know, not even her name. But before they can follow through with the transaction, Alice calls. Once again, Bill's emotional state changes. What begins as lust now changes to shame as he tells his wife that he and the daughter of a dead patient are waiting for the patient's relatives to arrive. Bill leaves Domino and she gives him a rain check. Bill hits the pavement again and somehow winds up at the Cafe Sonata, where his friend Nick Nightingale plays piano. The bar is closing, but Nick's night is not over. He has to play a late gig at a costume party where he has to wear a blindfold. This is not the first time. One time, the blindfold was loose and he got to see that the costume parties were really orgies full of beautiful naked women. The idea of hot, impersonal sex with beautiful women wearing masks excites Bill. But just as lust blinds Bill to the risks of having sex with the prostitute earlier, lust also makes him deaf to the fact that Nick is sworn to not tell anyone about the costume parties, as doing so could cost him his life. Bill blows off Nick's warnings and trepidations, promising to assume all the risks if he got caught. Nick gives him the password and the address of the costume party. Afterwards, Bill stops by the Rainbow Costume Shop and rents a costume and a mask. Now let's take a moment to recap. At the beginning of the film, 2 beautiful models at Victor's Christmas party seduce Bill and tell him that they are taking him to where the rainbow ends, which really means that they are taking him somewhere where they can have sex. While this is happening, Alice is dancing with Sandor, who is also trying to tempt her into having sex. Both of these scenes, when placed side by side, provide 2 clues foreshadowing events that occur later in the film. The 2 clues are the word rainbow and the fact that both Bill and his wife are being seduced at the Christmas party at the same time. Let's begin with Bill. The rainbow the models say that they are taking him to in the context of the entire film winds up being the Rainbow Costume Shop, where Bill rents his mask to get into the orgy. Remember, in the beginning of the film, Bill and Alice argue over him telling her that he is impersonal with his female patients and that his female patients only think of him as their doctor. He goes on to tell Alice that he is not aroused by his female patients because he is a father, he is her husband, and he loves her. However, if Victor's butler had not taken him to see about the crackhead hooker who almost overdosed, Bill and the 2 models may have gone someplace to have sex. And Bill would have definitely crossed the line with the prostitute if Alice had not called and shamed him out of it. Having sex with a woman at the costume party, on the other hand, is even better because he can fulfill his fantasies of having sex with a variety of beautiful women without jeopardizing his career, his marriage, or his image. Now, let's take a look at Alice. She admits that she intended on having an affair with a young naval officer. She is also tempted by Sandor at the Christmas party, and yet she resists this temptation by showing Sandor her wedding ring. This internal conflict on her part shows in how her body language contradicts what she says to Sandor, and at times she even looks like she is struggling with herself more than she is with Sandor, who seems to have some sort of spell over her body. The real difference between Bill and Alice at the Christmas party is Bill's willingness to give in to temptation and Alice's fight to resist temptation. Proverbs 6 and verse 27. Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? This fire, as it pertains to eyes wide shut, is Alice was on the verge of sacrificing her body and soul and even her family to be with the sailor had he not left the hotel abruptly and prevented her from doing so. No different than Bill, who would have probably had sex with the two models at the Christmas party if he didn't have to leave them to see about the prostitute that almost OD'd on crack. And he would have definitely had sex with Domino, the prostitute, if his wife had not called. And he also would have had sex with women at the orgy if he had not been caught. Alice's fantasy affair makes Bill feel justified in acting out his own sexual fantasies as though what she had told him had actually happened. With this, we move forward to Bill hires a cab to drive him to the costume party in Long Island, and there he uses the password that Nick gave him to gain entrance into the mansion. Following a religious ceremony, a man dressed as a monk waves a censer of burning incense towards the tall, naked women surrounding him before pairing each of them with a man to have sex. A woman in a mask approaches Bill with a warning, but all he sees is her naked body and refuses to leave the orgy without her. Two men walk up to ask him for the second password, and when he can't produce it, they make him take off his mask. The naked woman who warned Bill to leave offers to redeem him, and they accept her sacrifice, letting Bill go with a warning not to say anything about what he has seen. Starting with his wife's revelation of an affair she wanted to have on one end, the orgy at the costume party on the opposite end, and everything in between, Bill can now see the big picture, that detachment, chastity, and civility are all masks, as the men are all dressed as monks and the women are all dressed as nuns, and yet they are all engaged in the most primitive of all human activities. Bill is also part of this hypocrisy by hiding his true self under the superficial pretenses of father, doctor, and husband. Bill gets home late. Alice is in bed and wakes up to tell him about her dream of both of them naked and ashamed and her having sex with a number of men and enjoying it. Again, a dream and not something that has actually happened upsets Bill as though she had actually done what she dreamed about. Bill returns his rented costume, but the mask is missing. Did he leave it at the party? The missing mask is symbolic, and here's how. Bill was ordered to take off his mask at the costume party, but not just the mask he wore to cover his face, but also the mask of hypocrisy, that being perceived as a professional and a husband somehow puts him above depravity, in this case, desire. Remember, at the beginning of the film, Bill tells his wife that he detaches himself from his female patients and treats them impersonally and professionally. And also, when Alice asks Bill if he would screw the models at the Christmas party, he tells her that he would not screw them because he is married to her. They have a daughter, and he would not do anything to hurt her. Conditions that he has no trouble violating with the prostitute he wanted to have sex with or the woman at the orgy who redeemed him. The morning after the orgy, Bill's eyes are open to things that he could not see the night before. For instance, at the costume shop the previous night, he saw two Japanese men there who were dressed up like women wearing platinum blonde wigs and kimonos. This morning, Bill sees the same men leaving the costume shop in business suits. Bill also sees the 14-year-old girl he saw with the two men last night. The owner of the shop threw a fit, claiming the girl was his daughter, locked the men up in a room, and threatened to report them to the police. Now, seeing the men casually leaving the shop and the girl and the owner of the shop seemingly unconcerned, Bill puts two and two together and realizes that what he saw the night before was all a masquerade. The Japanese businessmen are John's, the 14-year-old girl is a prostitute, and the owner of the costume shop is her pimp. As well as seeing things as they are the following morning, Bill also sees the dangers that his desires almost got him into last night. For instance, he stops by a small midtown hotel to see his friend Nick Nightingale, who told him about the costume party. But Nick is not there. According to the desk clerk, a couple of huge, dangerous-looking men came by the hotel earlier that morning. They settled Nick's overdue bill, got him out of his room, put him in a car, and drove away. Next, Bill stops by the apartment of the prostitute he saw the night before. Domino is not there, but her roommate, who is there, gets Bill to take a seat and tells him that Domino's test came back positive. As he does with Alice's character, Kubrick makes the encounter here with the roommate, who is obviously a prostitute, an ambiguous encounter in which the characters seem to be flirting with each other, especially the prostitute, whose concern could easily be taken for desire. Again, a masquerade. In the film script, the roommate comes on to Bill after telling him about Domino. Bill, however, now realizes how close he'd come to getting a disease from Domino last night and resists Domino's roommate. Leaving Domino's place, Bill gets a newspaper and stops in a diner for a coffee, where on the front page of the paper he sees a beauty queen who died from a cocaine overdose around 4 a.m. after he left the costume party, and also around the same time that the desk clerk at the hotel saw two men escorting Nick Nightingale out of the hotel. Later, Victor Ziegler calls Bill to come over to his mansion, and there, Victor confirms Bill's worst fear. The dead beauty queen on the front page of the newspaper is the same beautiful woman who sacrificed her life for Bill at the costume party. Also, she is the same prostitute who almost overdosed on crack at Victor's Christmas party. Eyes Wide Shut ends with Bill finding his mask on the pillow beside his sleeping wife. For all of his education, titles, and pretenses of moral superiority, Bill, like those at the costume party dressed as monks and nuns, has a dark side. He and his wife both eat the forbidden fruit and awaken the next morning naked, terrified, and ashamed of themselves. But while he was away trying to find them some clothes, she, Alice tells Bill, made love to the young naval officer. Alice's dream is paradise lost, the mask of our ideal selves. When Bill tells his wife that he is detached from his female patients, he is telling her that he is detached from the sensual cravings of the flesh. However, he is not. Stanley Kubrick was interested in making a film about sexual relations as early as 1962 while he was filming Dr. Strangelove. But it was not until he read Arthur Schnitzler's 1926 novella Traum Novelle, or Dream Story, in 1968 that Kubrick found the story he had been searching for. With the help of journalist J. Cox, Kubrick bought the filming rights to Schnitzler's novella and began the process of adapting the story into a script. Kubrick enlisted the help of Frederick Raphael to write the script and took a number of liberties with the source material, such as moving the novella's setting from early 20th century Vienna to late 20th century New York. Kubrick and Raphael also changed the characters' names from Fridolin and Albertina to Bill and Alice. In fact, Kubrick removed all references to the ethnicity of the film's main characters, Bill and Alice. In the novella, Fridolin and Albertina's ethnicity is implied. Kubrick himself, of Jewish descent, wanted Bill and Alice Harford to be vanilla or neutral so as to not restrict the context in which their actions are perceived. But as with Kubrick's way of working, the film script was dynamic and in constant flux throughout filming. There are also a number of differences between the film itself and the script, the most obvious of which is the narrative exposition of Bill's voiceover in the script that is not used in the film. For instance, in the film there is a scene in which Marion, played by Marie Richardson, pleads with Bill to be his mistress. Also, there is no clear-cut indication as to how Bill feels about this. The exposition in the script, however, clearly indicates the fact that Bill considered having Marion for a mistress. In fact, after the orgy scene, Bill stops by to see Marion and they even end up making out before deciding not to go through with their affair. In the script, the woman who sacrifices her life to save Bill at the costume party takes off her mask, while in the film she does not take off her mask. In the script, Bill and the prostitute are closer to having sex than they are in the film before they are interrupted by Alice's phone call. In the film, neither Bill nor Domino undress, but in the script, Domino takes off her underwear. Also in the script, Domino's roommate equivocates on the specific type of illness Domino has, but within the context of the mood in this scene, we automatically assume that Domino has HIV. In the film, however, Domino's roommate tells Bill that Domino is HIV positive. And even after telling Bill this, along with the implications that he too might be HIV positive, Domino's roommate flirts with Bill to get him to pay her for sex, unlike the film in which the roommate offers Bill nothing other than polite concern. Another difference between the film and script is the final scene. In the script, the final scene plays out in Bill and Alice's bedroom, whereas in the film, the final scene plays out in a toy store. The script also ends with a longer conversation between Alice and Bill in which a moral is reached, unlike the film's ending, which is ambiguous and open to interpretation. Filming. The defining trait of genius is obsession, and Kubrick's obsession with making Eyes Wide Shut, his last film, perfect caused him to rewrite the script many times throughout production. Kubrick got actor Alan Cumming, who plays the hotel clerk and appears in only one scene, to audition for his role 6 times. Kubrick also approached Michael Herr to revise the script, but Herr had already worked with Kubrick on the 1982 film Full Metal Jacket and knew Kubrick very well, thank you, and declined Kubrick's offer, knowing that in accepting Kubrick's offer, he would more likely than not be committing himself to an epic production schedule that would keep him from pursuing other projects. And as it turned out, Herr was 100% right. Eyes Wide Shut went down in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest movie shoot ever, which included an uninterrupted stretch of 46 weeks. Cinematography, as with all of Stanley Kubrick's movies, is the real star of Eyes Wide Shut, as Kubrick himself planned with meticulous, painstaking precision every detail in every scene, from the opening shot of Alice Harford undressing to Victor Ziegler's opulent mansion to the mansion of the costume party, the walls of which display actual paintings by Kubrick's wife Christiane, and even down to the lighting. Kubrick instructed his cinematographer Larry Smith to use natural light sources within the scenes themselves, such as lamps and Christmas trees. The film's phantasmagorical look comes from Kubrick Kubrick's emphasis on using colors to evoke moods. To achieve this aesthetic, Larry Smith amplified the colors by push processing or amplifying them in post-production. Today, this process would be the equivalent of what's known in photography as HDR or high dynamic range. Kubrick, who lived in England, shot Eyes Wide Shut at Pinewood Studios in London due to his fear of flying. The shots of Bill Harford walking the streets of Greenwich Village are live shots composited with rear projection shots. The side shots of Bill Harford were shot live in London streets, and the shots of him facing the camera were filmed by having him walk on a treadmill in front of a rear projection screen. The Manhattan streets were also recreated at Pinewood Studios as Kubrick sent a work crew to Manhattan to measure its streets to accurately recreate the same streets at the studio. If cinematography is the heart of Eyes Wide Shut, its music would be its pulse. Starting with Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich's Waltz No. 2 as Bill and Alice are getting dressed to go to the Christmas party, to English composer Jocelyn Pook's pagan track called Migrations in the film's orgy scene at the costume party, to Sri Lankan singer Manikam Yogeswaran's ceremonial chant Bhagavad Gita, to Dominic Harlan's menacing Mesto Rigito e Ceremonial in the scene where Bill is being followed, to Chris Isaac's Baby Did a Bad Bad Thing in the film's trailer. All of the music in Eyes Wide Shut is perfect. The acting in the film is clean, cold, and razor sharp, starting with Tom Cruise as Dr. Bill Harford, who loses his grip on reality, while Nicole Kidman as his wife Alice takes as much pleasure in destabilizing her husband's mind as Delilah from cutting Samson's hair. There is also actor Alan Cumming as the hotel clerk, Lily Sobieski as the 14-year-old daughter of the owner of the costume shop, Sidney Pollack as Victor Ziegler, Sky Dumont as Sandor Zavost, and Julianne Davis and Vanessa Shaw as the crackhead prostitute at Victor Ziegler's Christmas party and the whore Domino, respectively. The reviews for Eyes Wide Shut were mixed. Roger Ebert, my favorite critic and director Martin Scorsese, gave the film positive reviews, while Stephen Hunter of the Washington Post criticized the film, describing it as creaky, ancient, and hopelessly out of touch. But as the case with all of Stanley Kubrick's films, the negative opinions of Eyes Wide Shut changed to positive opinions that also ranked the film among the best films ever. I didn't particularly like Eyes Wide Shut when I first saw it compared with his other films. However, seeing Eyes Wide Shut a number of times, I have grown to love it in its own way and for its own effect. As for its erotic, dark, and heavy atmosphere, I would compare Eyes Wide Shut with David Lynch's 2001 film Mulholland Drive. Eyes Wide Shut opened in North America on July 16, 1999, a little over 4 months after Kubrick's death on March 7, 1999, and was his second highest grossing film behind 2001 A Space Odyssey. Thanks for watching this video analysis and essay of director Stanley Kubrick's 1999 film Eyes Wide Shut, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. If you like this video, I would appreciate it if you would leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, but most of all, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to this playlist and channel, Cinema Geeks, for more video analysis and reviews such as this one. Thank you.